going to be talking about today? I was
We're
going to
going
introduce that.
Talk about how long it took you to be potty trained.
So today we're going to...
No, that didn't really happen.
Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. I'm here with my dad, and...
JP?
Yep. And today we're going to be talking about our words, about speaking out, the power of our words. This isn't going to be exactly like a biblical analysis of speaking out using like scripture or anything. It's going to be kind of more of a casual discussion. If we think of scriptures as we go on, we'll bring them up. But,
Yeah, and this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. I'm speaking that out. And I can tell you, I can't say I fully understand the speaking out and how it works. And I'm sure many of you, if you're Christians and you've been Christians for years, you maybe could go back and look at yourself as a Christian 5, 10, 20 years ago, and maybe there's major changes, minor changes. Obviously, nothing relating to the major doctrines. Jesus is Lord. He's both man and God, the Trinity, etc. Things like that. But maybe you look back at some of the spiritual gifts, or some of your political views, and you see they're different. So I didn't get this completely, even though I was born again at a Calvary Chapel in Fort Lauderdale, which is not Pentecostal, but definitely charismatic, evangelical. They did verse-by-verse studies. And I remember when he was little, even when he didn't even understand, I started speaking out over him. I would go, he's smart, he's handsome, he's strong, he's a godly boy. And then as he got older, I added, he's fast, he's funny, and talented in many areas. And I largely did that because God told me, but not those specific words, but more through when I'd ask about how to be a good parent, God would ask me, well, what did you need when you were growing up? And I was like, well, I could have used a little more positive reinforcement and conversation and explanations rather than just pointing out flaws and expectations that were lofty set for me without help on any real plan of how to get to them. So I started speaking those things out. As I got older, I had some issues with things in different times, and it's funny, God wanted me to watch, I think it was really a couple of specific videos from Joel Osteen or podcasts. And at first I was like, oh, come on, really? I'm like, my sister gave me a book by him, and I was like, I gave it back to her. I mean, which was funny because then God was like, do you know everything? Is there something you don't think you could learn? God always seems to talk to me in questions. I was like, oh, yeah, I hadn't, And I kind of felt like maybe a little like what it must have been for the disciples. They're told all this stuff about being Jewish, and then God has the sheet come down, with the animals in it, and take and eat and have this fellowship time with other people and talk with them and eat these different foods. And he knew he was supposed to do it, but it was something ingrained. And I was like, okay. So I was like, all right. So I was open to that. And at first I was like, kind of being a little critical. But then I realized why God had me listening to that. I had gotten like a tick-borne illness, because I still do. Would go hiking and hunting and things like that a lot. And I was pretty adventurous. I'd crawl around on the ground. I mean, I'd come out with ticks on me. And I kind of believed by faith nothing would happen to me. And that was pretty well true. And so ran into some marital problems. Jacob was growing up. He wasn't being a bad kid or anything, but he was starting to be 14, and most kids are jerks between the age of 12 and 14. Most boys. Oh, I didn't speak that out. He's smart, he's handsome, he's strong.
I'm not 14 anymore, so I don't think it applies.
Yeah. So it got really bad, and I had some negative issues I was dealing with in my marriage and stuff, and I was living in upstate New York. I was born in Florida, wanted to live in Florida. My whole family was down here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I wasn't getting better. I had inflammation all over my body. I was taking prednisone, hydroquinine, something I was injecting, methotrexate, and some kind of painkiller was stronger than Aleve. I forget the name of it right now. It's used for arthritis. They were telling me I had like multiple diagnoses. In fact, to this day I can't increase my disability insurance yet. I have no physical problems. I take only vitamins, and I can tell you why. So I had been praying, Lord, I'm believing by His stripes I'm healed. I had these different verses. However, I had some negative issues in my life, some things I had to let go of, some things I had to deal with, and by listening to the situation Joel Osteen was explaining about his mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and they stopped, or at least she stopped talking about cancer, maybe a whisper now and then, but she started quoting scripture and walking up and down her driveway quoting scriptures about healing. And I was like, okay, I kind of did that, but I was not necessarily cutting out the negative things I was saying. So I was saying positive things and negative things, and they both have power. There's life and death in the power of our tongue. We can literally curse people with our tongues, and we can bless people with our tongues. And that doesn't just go for the Christian. God created spiritual laws in this way, which are very, very interesting topic. And there's some controversy in that. How much can we actually speak out and believe? And how much does it have to be aligned with God's will? And you get into different camps about that. Make a long story short, I started speaking out healing. I started dealing with some issues, looking at sleep, nutrition, looking at my marriage, looking at different situations in my life, and realizing that there's some things that are causing on a daily basis problems, very serious negative problems in my life, that it's putting my body my mind, my emotions, even my spirit under great stress, under great duress, I would have to say. So I started speaking these things out, and then, it says in James, faith without works is dead. So if you're speaking out a healing, and you're not taking steps towards what a healed person would do, which for me was, well, if I'm healed, why am I injecting this medication, and why am I taking prednisone, diclofenac? That was the other medication. Why am I taking all these medications? So I started playing doctor, which got the doctor upset. I wasn't really playing doctor, but I was starting to decrease it. And I largely got reprimanded by the doctor, but I did converse with the doctor, probably not like most patients have. I talked about Jesus and back and forth and was relatable and friendly with him, but I did hold him accountable, saying, I am getting better, correct? And he goes, yes, and it's unusual that you have, and he admitted that. And then he started going, well, I guess, you could go off this medication, and then you could always go back on as when you need to. And I'm like, I'm not going to need to. And it was just beyond his ability to comprehend what I was speaking out there. I'm literally going, I'm not going to need it. I'm not going to. He's like, well, if you do, I'm like, no, I'm not. Now, I can't say all of a sudden it was just like that. It didn't happen. I would start to go off the medications, and sometimes some symptoms would start coming back. I'd start going back on them. I never got back up to even half the doses I was at. But I started realizing if I got stressful situations in my life that I didn't manage spiritually, obviously mentally, emotionally, physically, things like that too. But like I say, I was like getting angry. Some of these emotions would manifest again. If I was, during COVID, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. I just started getting things together. I bought a new house. I have a new car. These aches and pains started coming back. I started to have to go back on some medications. And I started realizing, like, okay, no, this needs to be addressed. So I started speaking those things out. Like, God's got this, and I can look back multiple times. I used to even write down all the different things God would bless me and do for me and help me with. And it just became like, I just know it's going to happen. I literally know if something bad would happen all around me, God would work that for good. And within a few months, He restores what the locust has eaten. He lifts me up. Not say exalts me, but he exalts me, puts me in a good position again. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I'm His child. I've said this to you many times before. We're called friend of God, the bride of Christ, children of God. Those are all endearing terms, close relational terms, and it's not because of my behavior. Now, my behaviors result in outcomes and consequences that can delay things or create some problems. But even in those situations, I find God intervenes miraculously and helps me. Uh, Better for me, and I would say for God too, that I don't repeat those same mistakes, and that He doesn't have to keep coming in to rescue me, because that's what an immature believer would do. Like Paul was talking about, I should be able to, you know, like give you an equivalent of beef, a solid meal here, but you can only receive milk. Well, my behavior, was more mature. I wouldn't repeat a lot of these same mistakes, so I would learn from them. So I started realizing, all right, there's a possibility if I get involved with certain things, they could take my stress levels too high, and I need to manage my stress levels. But that doesn't mean I just disconnect from everything and just, walk around praying and being a Christian, retire early, go on disability. I mean, no, not that at all. But it did require that I start speaking out these things and then self-examine, reflect. And I say self-examine, look at myself, and then bring it to God also, who shows me, well, this area we could work on, this area work on. He suggested, God showed me read. I had read Mere Christianity when I went to Calvary Chapel Bible College, and I ended up getting an audio book. And there's a lot of good things in there about morals and ethics and discipline, and a lot of that is something in our culture where we might be getting to some extremes. Do you think that too?
Yeah.
Like you got some churches that are getting very focused on the behaviors, and some are getting very focused on they used to call it greasy grace in the 90s, but more of a, like, oh, Jesus loves you, it's all right, And Joel Osteen's church is very much like that. It's very motivational. It's God's got this blessing for you, and He does have all this stuff for you. And I hope those people are reading the entire book of Elijah that Joel Osteen's quoting from, or they're reading all about the whole thing, all the judges, not just Gideon, and they could see, and then they try to reflect and learn from what happened there, and talk to God about it, and do some Bible studies, and but maybe they're not. I don't know, but that doesn't mean Joel Osteen's doing the wrong thing. We're living in a society that's broken and weak, and the primary purpose is for us to get saved. You can't mature in the faith if you're not saved. It's better to be, like Paul was saying, a mature Christian than a baby Christian, but a baby Christian is still entering the kingdom, and that's who Jesus died for. So, speaking out, I don't know if I touched it in the depth you want, but please expound on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it kind of makes sense. I think there's, a connection between what we say and what we believe in our, our words are kind of expelling what we feel on the inside, what we believe on the inside. And so, even, with salvation, it's believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus is the Lord and God raised Him from the dead. And so, I think there's a correlation between what we speak out and what we believe, and I think we can even speak things out and we begin to believe things that we're speaking out more and more. So I think they both kind of work to affect each other. What we believe in our heart will affect what we say. I think what we say can affect what we believe in our heart more and more. If you're saying you could start out just being okay, I have this illness, and at first you're okay, it's not a big problem. You're just saying a fact, I have this illness, but then as it goes on and on, it starts to become more negative, because it's a negative thing you're saying. Oh, you have this illness, or you're in poverty, or you're depressed or something, and you start speaking these things, saying these things, and it starts to become more and more, that's who you are. That's who you identify as. And so I think it just kind of makes sense that it's if you're believing on the inside a negative thing, you're going to start to have outward effects of those negative experiences, that negative feelings that you're feeling will have negative physical manifestations. Sure. And another thing is, I feel what you were saying with when you're feeling angry, and then you felt kind of those symptoms coming back. I think sometimes Christians think that it's God punishing them for this sin. And I think it's more an effect that goes with letting a negative emotion grab hold of you, and not really leaning on God that much. Not Him saying, oh, you're leaning on me, boom, symptoms come back. It's more just like if you're not leaning on him and like in these positive emotions that come from trusting in him, and you're leaning more towards the other side with negative emotions, it's just a natural effect that's going to happen is you're going to again have those negative physical manifestations. So it's not like a act of like disapproval from God. It's more of just like there's like a disconnect there where you're not it's just how it works kind of.
Well, it's true. Okay, so what we speak out, positive or negative, it's like planting a seed, and that seed starts germinating. And I think of Abram, God had finally had to change his name to Abraham. It seemed like he spent more time talking about how negatively how he didn't have offspring, I didn't have anyone to accept his inheritance, a child, or how his promises were going to work. That God said he'd be the father of a multitude. But instead of going around and saying, hello, I'm Abraham. I'm going to have many children. In fact, generations and all this area around me. There are going to be multiple tribes and cultures that come out of me. He didn't say that. He would be like, all I have is Eliezer, the head servant. So God literally changed his name. So he's walking up to him. He's like, hello, I'm the father of a multitude. Hello, I'm the father of a multitude. He's speaking it out. And I think that's where tongues come in, where God can bypass our mind and, maybe even our heart, and just speak these things out in the spiritual realm, and they come out as gibberish to us. But in that realm, by the grace of God, he's worked it out that we're speaking out what needs to be prayed, what needs to be said. Now, interesting, God had to deal with me on, there is also a difference between having faith and speaking out and doing the same things over and over and over again, expecting different results. That's called insanity. So, and I've heard some sermons from Joel Osteen, and then I've read stuff from him, and sometimes I feel like he in the snippets they put on podcasts, they leave out some of his sermons, because he was talking about how this young pregnant young woman, a single mom, needed this job, and she went in there and she got this job due to unforeseen circumstances. The manager was distracted, this and that. When she took this test, she ended up scoring high on it accidentally due to some computer glitch, and she got the job. Now, he then went on to talk about, now she got this job and she rose to the occasion. She learned how to do all these things. She moved up in the company, was a good employee. She didn't get the job and then immediately take the next few days off, and call in sick. She didn't come in and then get reprimanded for standing around the water cooler or going to the bathroom too much or being rude, maybe answering the phone. So, these are some things that you would think are a given, but maybe not. But maybe some people, it's not a given. And when you're a baby Christian, God will literally smooth those things out for you. But as you grow older, he'll still get involved and do these things. But those are the things where faith, without works is dead. You've got to, God gave you this, and you're going to appreciate this and worship God and show God, and you're going to do well. You're going to treat people the way you want to be. You're going to work the way you would want someone to work for you. That's showing your faith. That's operating in the Spirit. So that's an important thing about speaking out, and also how faith works. Now, that faith and speaking out also has to go together. Like Peter, remember, he got out of the boat. He said, "Lord, have me come to you."
Mm-hmm.
And so Jesus said, "Come," and he got out, and then he got scared and took his eyes off the Lord, and people make fun of him for that or something, or when the rooster crowed. But he went out in faith.
Yeah.
I'd rather go out in faith and do 100 things and fail at 3 or 4 of them than go out and do one thing, fail, and then go, "That's it, I'm not doing it again. I failed." What is that about?
Mm-hmm.
Remember the first time I decided I was going to go evangelizing by myself. Not the best idea. You should probably go out with a group of people, friends, or some kind of church ministry. I was in Pompano Beach, Florida. It was a pier, I think, and a boardwalk. But I was in the concrete. I was rollerblading. I rollerblade up to this man. I'm like, "Hello, sir, I'd like to tell you about," and I go to hand him this Bible tract I made. He goes, "Get out of here!" Wah! I just fall off my rollerblades. Ah! I'm like, "I got to get out of here," But then the next person I go to, I'm like, I'm going to get out of here. I'm like, I'm not going to do this ever again. And like, next person I go to, it was like, they actually talked to me, and I'm like, oh, I didn't really plan on what I was going to say after the first 20 seconds. Like, yeah, read that thing and come to church. And I think I tried to do John 3:16, but it came out like more like, for God so John the 3:16 that did. Wait, let me try.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
yes, get me back on track. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with like the Peter walking on water thing is like, I think you kind of look at that with like our words, kind of are often like show where our focus is, and so like his focus was on Jesus at first, and then his focus shifted towards the waves in the storm, and then that's when he started to fall. And that's with us, if our words are focused more on positive things and more on speaking on good things, speaking of things from God, if they shift more towards the negative side of things and things that aren't from God, we're going to then not have the power that God has given us really like working in us as
doubt
way.
is being hyper or procrastinating, beyond normal procrastination. Sometimes procrastination can be a great motivator. Like, you wait to get something done, and then you just push through it and you get it done.
AKA my college career.
Yeah. But one's like reeling you in. The other one, the extreme, would be God pushing you along. And both are part of the human experience. But neither necessarily have any doubting going. There's more time management or getting out in front of God, getting too excited, or being overly cautious. But if you're a person like literally doubting, you're wavering. It says that you're waving, like James is wavering like the sea. You're unstable in all your ways. And that's true. I've thought about that. So if you're going to start speaking things out, don't start unspeaking it out. Don't speak out the opposite. Like I've literally heard on Christian radio, the DJs or even a pastor saying, here's something, I can't believe that. And you're using it more as an expression. But literally, if you say that, I can't believe that, you're making a confession. That's a statement of faith. And you're literally saying, I can't or won't believe that. And this is why people who are of other religions, they've already decided, I'm not a Christian. They might not know anything about it. They might not even be looking at, oh, that Christian was a jerk. Look what they did. They did something I would have never done. They may not even look at it at all. They just, I'm not a Christian. You fill in the blank. The problem is, if you've already decided, how are you going to be opened up? Something's got to pry that open. That's why Jesus uses, we pray for people, but we speak to them. We have a relationship with them. You invite them to church. You talk. Then that starts to loosen this up or open things up for them. They're willing to hear, and they know you. They respect you. They want to hear about what you like. And to them, it might be very innocent at the moment, or just even being respectful to you, or maybe they're a little interested. But that's an example of if people who aren't even saved are speaking out, no, or I won't believe that, or I'm against organized religion. They're already put a wall up. So that wall has to come down in some way. And that's where, why we pray for people, why we would want to speak out in prayer that they would be saved, that these things that are keeping them from seeing it would be removed. People say the scales would be removed from their eyes or their heart.
And then back to the Abraham to Abraham thing. It also happens with Jacob to Israel. And, it's kind of funny on Jacob, but so, I'm actually pretty sure Jacob means like the deceiver.
At your christening, I said his name is Jacob, but this day he will be called something like Israel. I proclaimed your name.
Israel is then governed by God. I think Jacob is the deceiver, so it's kind of like,
heel catcher. That's what I heard.
Heel
deceiver.
Catcher, something like that, yeah. And so it's like God changes his name, so he's no longer, just like with Abram to Abraham, he's no longer going around being like, oh, I'm the liar, deceiver, heel catcher. What do you say?
Yeah, heel catcher.
Heel
yeah,
catcher.
That's right. I heard that was a translation.
And so it's like, instead he's saying, I'm governed by God.
Mm-hmm.
I think very much when we're born again,
It's more than that. It's in the New Testament too. Peter, Jesus
Yeah.
changed his name to
Simon
to Peter, the Rock. You know, and there's been squabbles back and forth. Well, who's the Rock? Is it the statement on this church that I am, the Christ? I will build my church, or is it on this church, Peter? I will build this rock, Peter. Will I build my church? I'm the big rock. He's the little rock. It seems like that's one of those times where it's in there and it can be used in different situations to mean either one. Okay, I don't want to get off track though. But that is relating to speaking things out. Jesus literally changing their names. There's a reason he changed their names, because their names meant something to them that may have had a huge negative connotation that went with their name. So he frees them from that by giving them a new name. And don't we get a new name when we go to heaven?
And I think that's so much. Actually, yeah, going back to what you were saying with people with other religions deciding that it's like, oh, I'm not a Christian, and it's like if you're still identifying with your current identity or old, if once you're born again, it's your old identity. If you're still identifying like that, then you're never going to become born again. You're never going to become a Christian, because you need to kind of leave that life behind. You have to, there's like die to self, die to the flesh, die to your old life. You're get a new life with Christ. That's when it means born again. So it's like a very extreme version of that is just completely changing your name, and that kind of it goes with speaking out with your words. Like you're no longer even identifying yourself with the same name when you're introducing yourself to people. You're now saying, You're saying a different name when you're introducing yourself to people.
It's interesting. So in marriage, you take the name of the spouse, of the husband.
Yeah.
It's may go much deeper than we think.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely more than just for Christians. There's something set up there with our speaking out. I mean, it's more than just speaking out or speaking to the problem, the situation. Obviously, all these words are a manifestation. They're coming from within us. They're coming from our views from inside, right? But I would say there's more to it than that, because whether you're a Christian or not, it's like, so say you're on a sports team and you're going up against the best team in the league and you're currently the lowest, and you usually stay that way. Your coach could go out there and give you a talk like, hey, just go out there and have fun. It's just an exhibition game. No one expects you to win. That's terrible. I mean, why would you do that?
Mm-hmm. Even if that's your approach to it, I feel like you might as well, in any situation, actually just say, listen, we're going to win this.
Yeah, go out there and we're going to turn this cycle around. And I'll tell you something, get them grunting and screaming. Well, no, get them to say, we're going to turn this around, coach. Yes, you are. You're going to run those plays. You're going to catch that ball. You're going to stay focused, and have them repeat it back to you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, why do you have pep talks?
Yeah, But I would say that's speaking it out. You may not believe it to be true. There has to be belief behind your speaking, but there's power in the speaking, because the speaking it out can change your thinking, which is why you saw on The Office, what was the name of Vance Refrigeration?
Vance Refrigeration.
Bob Vance Refrigeration. Why do I remember that? Because he said why. He said, I say that 7 times in a minute or something like that. It makes people remember it. I don't. But there's something about speaking it out. Now that's just putting it into the memory. But literally speaking things out, you're planting a seed. It's growing. It's going to come to fruition. What's being spoken out, and somewhere in there, you now believe what you're saying. Like what if you go to college and college is hard. It's been hard for me. It's always been. I try to catch myself saying that about certain things. Now that doesn't mean that some things aren't hard. They may be hard.
That doesn't mean live in denial about something.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you live in denial or insanity. I mean, definitely, I spoke to him about, play to your strengths. You know what I mean? I use an example of, if you're right-handed, You wouldn't practice writing with your left hand, so someday you can be as good with your right hand. If you spend twice as much, if you spend, just a little bit more time on your right hand, you could probably improve your handwriting even more there. Where this trying to do it with your left hand, you could spend months and months and years and time and energy, and it still will never be anywhere near as good as what your right hand was. So, you wouldn't want to speak out things that are pointless. That's why our words, we do have to be very careful. Our thoughts, our words, our hopes, our dreams, all these things, they should be checked with prayer, with journaling, with Christian fellowship. You got more comment about talking. I'm trying to think of cases in the Bible. The first thing, God speaks out all of our creation.
Yeah.
And I heard Creflo Dollars, gotten in trouble for this, saying we're like little gods. I heard that we're Elohim, but we are. We're an inferior trinity, for lack of a better term. We're not going to be God ever. We're not going to be like the Mormons' view of it. But we have these same powers to speak things out. I don't know. Maybe if I did have the faith and power behind it, I could speak something out if it's within God's will at that moment to do something and accomplish something. To do it frivolously, I see, and maybe I don't believe that I would have that power. But maybe I'm blocking that ability right there. Now we're getting off. This is going more into more hypothetical than specifically biblical straight information. But looking at it in that way, we do have great power and ability just by what we're speaking out. Tongues has been controversial. We talked about that a little bit earlier. And I like Joseph Prince's views on that the most. Pastor Dan Pleward from Calvary, it's a Calvary Chapel, called Calvary Church in Jupiter Farms, Florida. He was talking about the same thing with this. That's a time for us to be able to speak out without having our brain or emotions getting in the way. And I've done that. I'm like, I heard Pastor Joseph Prince say, you should pray at least in tongues at least half an hour out of the day. And I'm like, this, I told you about this. I also had this Bible college professor who was like, you should always read 12. He was great in all these ways, but he had this weird thing of 12 chapters of the Bible a day. 12 chapters of the Bible a day. Are you kidding me? I hope that includes the stuff I have to study also, right? So I don't think you can be rigid about that, because one time I was walking, I really didn't have anything particularly on my mind. There's always someone to pray for, but I didn't have any stuff really just there. I was just like, let me just pray in tongues. And I'm like, I don't want to miss anything. And I felt like God just saying to me, just listen. I was like, just listen? What do you mean, just listen? And I'm like, I don't hear you saying anything. Just listen. And now if you just listen, you hear a train going by. But I was in the woods, and I was hearing the birds, and I thought, you know what, I'm walking with God in the woods here. And we don't have to be talking. I don't have to be talking every second. He doesn't have to be talking every second. Right? Everything doesn't have to be like, oh my God, please, oh Lord, please, we got to deal with this issue. Oh Lord, I don't know how we're going to do this. The finances, the cancer, I don't know how we're going to, but you know how, that sounds, I've met people like that's how I actually heard that going to a Pentecostal church I'm not saying they do this all the time, but fervent prayer that you have to pray for. I'm like, yeah, but that's one type of prayer. You're fervently praying, but every moment doesn't have to be tongues. It doesn't have to be requests. It doesn't have to be worship and praise.
I think that's the difference between, religion and just a relationship with God. You may think like, you need to pray this way because that's kind of the tradition of how your denomination does it or something, it's a relationship with God goes more than the denomination, more than the traditions. I think prayer could also just be talking to God.
Yes,
we're talking.
And I felt that the Lord has shown me, for me, better places than others. Probably the best time as I have would be journaling. Second best would be prayer walk in a quiet area. Third would be driving, like on a country road or something. Driving in like interstate traffic or city traffic is the only thing I'm praying is that I don't beat my horn at people and yell at them and then get into some kind of fight. I mean, I've done that. Just like I'm thinking, it's not particularly spiritual, but oh, this is going to take so long. Oh, I hate that. I hate doing this billing. Oh, I don't want to do. And I realize I've spent more time in my thoughts and my words complaining about it, and when I actually get down and do it, it took like an hour. But I've spent like the past few weeks, and not just procrastinating, complaining about it. And so I am, and by the grace of God, by your Holy Spirit, I'll do better with it. But literally speaking out, like I'm going to do that on whatever it is, Sunday evening, Monday afternoon. I'm going to do that. I'm going to bang that all out. Lord, I pray it's going to go smoothly. I'm not setting any unrealistic expectations that I'm going to get upset with. Lord, I pray, believe, I'm speaking out. You're going before me. You're going to give me favor. I'll be able to enter that data correctly. And whoever processes it quickly and efficiently. Nobody's trying to, going to take any of the money owed to me. And I speak that stuff out. And I believe that works. Now, that doesn't mean I don't follow up and check my invoices to make sure I got paid everything. I do. And if I find a mistake there, I'm like, how did I turn that in? I forgot to sign this one page. And I'm like, that's a lawyer type stuff. I mean, you know who I am, where I work. I mean, I didn't sign something, so, then they withhold the payment. So nothing to get upset about. Just make sure I learned from that mistake. Don't do it again. It's still an easy fix. I mean, it could be even the stuff about ourselves. Like you could say, it's hard to lose weight. Well, don't say that. Why don't you say, it's easy to lose weight? Look, in fact, I'm losing weight right now. I'm not even doing anything. Technically, you are. You're burning calories, and in that sense, you're moving towards that. I mean, it should be things you want to speak out that are positive. I'm not saying that you're going to be able to just speak things out, and there's nothing that we have to do.
Yeah, I mean,
on our side.
you're not really going to just speak out, I'm losing weight, and you're going to lose weight, but you could say,
I'm
going to work out
cake.
today.
Yeah.
I'm going to work out today. So I'm going to lose weight.
It's going to be a productive workout. I'm losing weight. I'm reaching my goal there.
So that's where I think also the faith and works things comes in. Faith without works is dead. Faith that you're going to lose weight is dead if you're not working to lose weight. If you're not working in any area of your life, to improve in your communication skills and your...
Yeah. I James, I think, uses that in terms of, so you're a Christian, and what are you doing? That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Are you taking care of widows and orphans? Are you being a good neighbor? Where does this act out? Where does this play out? Is there somebody you're cheating? You're a rich person. You're cheating them. I say that because it's in James, literally. He about who comes into the church, and you give them the rich, well-dressed person. You give them a special seat. This reminds me of the movie The Jesus Revolution. And you want to give the person who looks like they're distinguished a distinguished place, and you want to take the person who looks more like a homeless person or a hippie and shove them off to the side, or maybe even make them stand in the back. James reminds us there that maybe it's the wealthier people who might be cheating you and dragging you off to court to pay something. What are you doing here? What are you thinking? What are you saying to them? Go stand over there. You're not finishing the sentence, but you're making them of less value. And where's your faith? Your faith is certainly not mature if you're doing that, right? It's misguided. He's helping to straighten out your faith so you're mature. So it goes in all areas. I mean, if you have something happening, like you're trying to buy a house and this and that, I mean, it doesn't matter what the market is doing or this or that. I mean, in fact, you're probably better to not look at all those things. You're better off to just pray about getting the house you want to get. Like literally write down what you want and say, Lord, I believe you're going to find us this house in, short period of time. Maybe you want to even say in 30 days, 60 days, and then believe it. And then go do your part. I mean, God may literally send it to you. You might drive down a street by accident going down the wrong way and you see a for sale sign, but still do your part. You still got to look up the houses, maybe even have a real estate agent, right? So who knows if God's going to work through that or he's going to work on the outside of that. But your work or your faith is the believing it, the action. That's your action. You're going to believe this. You've specified it. And, you don't want it for selfish gain. You want it because you have a family. You're a child of God. You love God. He was going to bless you. You know he's going to bless you. These are promises. And you're going to bless others.
there's definitely like a correlation between our words and I think both like the outside world and also I think our inside inward man, our feelings, our beliefs, our thought patterns. I think there definitely is like I think our words both will affect both. And I think it's easier maybe to wrap our heads around maybe how it affects our inward experiences more than like outwards, because we're kind of like I don't know how exactly it works. I say this is going to happen. I say, oh, we're gonna get this house, or I'm gonna do well on this test, or I'm gonna get this job, whatever it is. You do, and you're like, but then sometimes maybe you'll be like, oh, I'm gonna win the lottery, and then you don't. And it's like, so maybe it's a little bit like more confusing to figure out how exactly works with the outside world. But definitely you can really see how it works on the inside of like, yeah, if you're speaking out a certain idea about yourself, that's gonna begin to be just how you think of yourself and the perspective you're having now in the world. And I think and I think that could be also a negative, that could work negatively also. I think with I think society today is like kind of spitting out these saying these same kind of phrases of you get to like LGBTQ and abortion stuff, and not to and the political stuff, but I guess I think generally on the liberal side of things you kind of see this where it's just like you're speaking these same kind of ideas that aren't based on reality, honestly, aren't based on what God wants us to be doing, and so you start to think that's right, that's how it is. I think this is to be with like scholarly people get into like evolution and stuff like that, where it's like they say, oh, this is how it is, and like I think sometimes they'll even
they've
say
spoken
like
it out.
they've spoken it out, and then they could even say, oh, it's a theory, but they don't actually live there because they're saying this is what it is.
Yeah, that's the
it's like,
danger
well,
of
ultimately
teaching
it's a theory,
something
but it's
and
like
speaking out something that you don't believe. It will ultimately become what you believe.
so definitely works negatively and positively, and you obviously want to use it positively to speak out what God says, not what the world says. So I think that wraps up our conversation on speaking out. I guess this week kind of titled "Bringing the Inward Man Out." Maybe that's a good way to kind of summarize this.
Yeah, that's a good name. It's a good title for that.
Because that's really what speaking out is. It's bringing your thoughts out, or even, as I've said, bringing what you're speaking out inward as to what your thought patterns are. That wraps it up. Thank you for watching, and please check out some of the other videos I have on this channel, and keep growing your inward man. God bless.